Okay, thank you all for waiting for the 7 o'clock moment to roll by. We want to be by the book as far as the time we start our meeting. Okay, can I have the roll call, please?
Andrews?
Here.
Dressel?
Here.
Don? Here. Lopez, absent with notice. Jimenez here. Steinfeld?
Here.
Gonzalez?
Here.
Okay, calling the meeting to order then at 7 o'clock on the dot. Can you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag. Oh, forgive me, I made an error. We need to call the roll one more time. Please, Elizabeth. Sorry.
I just noticed too. Thank you. Andrews?
Here.
Dressel?
Here.
Don?
Still here.
Lopez, absent with notice. Jimenez here. Steinfeld?
Here.
Gonzalez?
Thank you very much. Okay, on to the superintendent's report.
Hold on. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're going to do a couple different presentations today that really actually align together because they both have an impact on what our back to school plans are going to look like. I always like to, well, for the past year and a half, I like to reiterate that this is based on the most recent information that we have as of today, but we all know how quickly things have been evolving and changing over the past several weeks, and so we fully expect that there may be updates to this, and our goal will be to continue to communicate with our families as we get more information. Oops, sorry, hold on, there we go. So we want to start off by, well, we know there's a lot of managerial things and things that people are concerned about regarding the start of the school year. We always want to start off with reminding everyone how excited we are to bring our students back to school. We've had a variety of sessions taking place throughout the summer, and here's some pictures of our students that have been in summer school, and I know how excited our staff and all of us are to bring our students back to school this year, really focus on that, inspiring that passion in our students, getting into those different learning opportunities and learning environments. So first and foremost, that is the message that we want to start with when we look ahead to the start of the school year. So as I stated a minute ago, our return to school plan follows the most recent guidance. In District 100, we really look at a variety of resources. We have CDC, IDPH, Cook County Department of Public Health, Illinois State Board of Education. Sometimes they mirror each other, sometimes they don't, sometimes one starts and then others change. And so we really try to keep up with what's happening in all of those agencies and ensure that we are providing the most safe environment for our students. So as I mentioned, plans are tentative and subject to change, and I would say even throughout the school year, as we look at how frequently public health guidance is being updated. We always want to make sure we're looking at our local transmission and what's happening, and when I say local, I mean in the community, but I also mean within our schools. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, as well as the percentages of vaccination in our community. So I think this is the most important piece that we want to make sure is getting out in our community. We've sent out some different pieces of information, but the Illinois State Board of Education has put out a proclamation that all schools must resume full in-person learning for all student attendance days with this school year. The only exception to that would be if a student is attending school and they need to quarantine due to exposure, the district will provide support in a remote manner in that instance. But we are required to provide full in-person learning for all student attendance day. So if you remember last year, we went through a variety of phases, and that little logo there changed several different times. We had our remote logo, we had our hybrid logo, and we're really excited now that we have our in-person learning logo up there. So our school schedule for next year will remain what it has been in the past, full day in-person schedule. Elementary 8:30 to 3, and our middle schools 8:15 to 3:17. The exception will be for our middle schools. On the first Tuesday of the month, this does not begin till October, middle school students will have a late start to allow for increased staff professional learning. That is something that we were able to implement during remote learning, and our middle school really benefited from having that time to connect, to do professional learning, to make sure that they were addressing the needs of students and have that time to build the culture within their school. So there's dates listed there, which we'll be putting out to families. And basically the students would start 1 hour later. Our bus service will still be provided in the same manner, but our students will go, our middle school students only, on those 7 dates throughout the school year, will have a start at 9:15. So as we talk about the upcoming school year, there are many, many layers of mitigation that are recommended and that we will be following based on those recommendations. So achieving high levels of COVID-19 vaccination among eligible students and teachers is critical to helping students safely resume full operations. We have offered several vaccination clinics. We will be having vaccines available at our back to school picnic. COVID-19 vaccinations are not mandatory. However, CDC and IDPH strongly encourage that those that are eligible be vaccinated. We will request, will not mandate. We've had this question, and as of now, we will certainly not mandate that vaccinated students let us know, but we will request from families that if a child is vaccinated, that they would submit their vaccination card to our nurse's office, similar to how they would submit regular vaccinations. And the reason for that is if a student is exposed, they would not need to quarantine if they have been vaccinated. And having the nurses have that information will be valuable. So that will be a request. And fully vaccinated individuals, as I said, are not required to quarantine if they are a close contact and show no symptoms. So it will be helpful for our nurses to have that information. Masking, based on the most recent CDC guidance, recommending universal indoor masking, we will be following that. Universal masking for all staff, students, and visitors to our buildings. At this time, we anticipate at least starting the school year with similar restrictions on visitors, restricting the number of people that are coming into our buildings. We anticipate we will start the year that way and then see how things are going. Students and staff who are masked and within 3 to 6 feet of a confirmed case are not considered close contacts. So if they're within 1 to 3 feet, they would be. If they're both masked, 3 to 6 feet, they would not in schools. We know that that will help decrease the number of students needing to quarantine. Obviously, our goal is to make sure kids are in school with us learning, and so we want to put as many mitigation factors in place so they do not miss in-person instruction. Masks are required at all times on school buses, and in an outdoor setting, students will be able to remove masks if social distancing can be maintained. Again, these are the recommendations as of right now, and so we will continue to follow the recommendations of the CDC and IDPH. Physical distancing, 3 feet of physical distancing will be followed to the greatest extent possible. The less distance we have, the more mitigation factors we want to have in place. We know we will not, in all instances, be able to keep kids 3 feet apart, which is why we want to make sure they're also having their masks, that they're also hand washing and implementing all of the mitigation factors. Cafeterias and classroom spaces that are utilized during lunch will be used to allow for that physical distancing. So that more detailed information about that will come out based on your child's school, because some of our, for example, our middle schools have cafeterias and they might have other places in the building that they can utilize for kids to eat. You can see Allison, the principal here, has picnic tables outside. That will be something that can be utilized. Classroom spaces maybe need to be utilized depending on the space available in your child's school. Same with assigned entrances and exits, very similar to making sure that we're having kids apart from each other as they walk in and in common spaces. And again, staggered hallway schedules. So if a teacher is taking a class to the bathroom, at the elementary level, we might not have 5 classes out there, but we would have 1, and having some of those staggered times where kids can be apart from one another. So our food service, regular breakfast and lunch meals will resume. We will, again, as I mentioned, physical distance will be maximized to the greatest extent possible. Additional spaces for meal service will be utilized when necessary. So in some places, they may be able to fit kids in the cafeteria 3 feet apart or more, and they won't need to use additional spaces. In some places, they will need to use some classrooms. The challenges with the middle school, with the elementary school, is that our gyms are also our lunchrooms. And so to try to expand the amount of time that kids can eat lunch means less time for PE classes. And so we have to be creative in our elementary schools and use some different spaces, including potential for outside while the weather is still nice. So all of those things are being considered when talking about lunchtime. As I mentioned, school-specific information will follow, and additional information will also follow regarding community meal service, where during remote learning we had a lot of families picking up meals at our schools. And so once we have more information on that, we will get that out to our community. But the current service does continue, I believe, Jenny, through August 11th, correct? Yes, okay. We will continue to do contact tracing and quarantine as we did last year. We do work with the Cook County Department of Public Health. We do some initial contact tracing here. We let the Cook County Department of Public Health know that information, and they help us determine who needs to be quarantined based on that information. Again, as I mentioned, non-vaccinated students and staff. If you're non-vaccinated, you would continue to quarantine if you're directly exposed. Fully vaccinated individuals are not required if they are a close contact and show no symptoms. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the instance where the school district will provide support remotely if a child has to be quarantined. And just that little box over there, when to quarantine, within 6 feet for 15 or more minutes over a 24-hour period, with the exception that excludes students in that 3 to 6 foot range if both students are wearing face masks and other mitigation strategies are implemented, which we will be doing in District 100. COVID-19 screening and testing. So our biggest defense is reminding that if students are not feeling well, if staff are not feeling well, they should stay home when they are sick, and that would minimize the chance of spread. We will continue. We did get some feedback from families that they really do appreciate that self-certification piece. And so we will continue with the morning email self-certification to ensure and remind that have we checked to make sure our kids are feeling well to be able to come to school. We had great success with our Buy Next Now testing program for symptomatic students and staff. That will still be available at all of our schools. And we are currently working with the Shield Illinois program to get off the ground a weekly saliva screening. That would be voluntary. On our survey, we had about 75% of the families that responded say that they would be interested in a weekly saliva screening if their children were unvaccinated. That would be something that would be optional and would be available. We hope to have that off the ground at the start of the school year. It could be a week or 2 in, but we will get communication out about that. All the cleaning and hygiene protocols that we had in place, which were highly successful, will be in place again this year. Continuing with that appropriate hand washing, even teaching that to our younger students, reminding them, having hand sanitizer available. We also had a lot of visual reminders around the schools last year, and so that will continue to be in place, ensuring our bathrooms have proper supplies and that kids have extra time to wash their hands throughout the school day. Our cleaning, disinfecting, ventilation protocols continue to be in place. When we can open windows, we will open windows, and we continue to maintain our ventilation system at the highest level to ensure that proper airflow. I mentioned hand sanitizer stations and that regular hand washing. So I think a big piece of this is knowing that we are going to continuously monitor what's happening in our community on a variety of levels. If you look on the left, that was our COVID-19 dashboard that we had up on the website last year. And I know that's really hard to see, but we reported staff and student cases as well as how many people were having to quarantine. And all the way at the bottom, there's a bar that says, school confirmed cases of in-school transmission. And last year, that number remained 0 all year. We did not have any cases that the Cook County Department of Public Health linked back to spread within our schools. And so we are gonna continue to be vigilant about those practices being in place. We'll also monitor data at the state level through IDPH. Cook County has their data up regularly. We can also get more local data. And so those are things that will always be part of any decision-making process around any changes to our mitigations. And so this is really the important piece, is that all of these mitigation strategies, we're starting off the year with all of these pieces in place, because we're all looking and hearing what's happening in the world, and things are starting to spread a little bit more than we've seen. And we're getting more and more recommendations of making sure we're being more proactive so that we can prevent that in our schools. There's a lot of data out there that shows that there's been minimal spread in schools, and schools are one of the safest places because all of these mitigation strategies are in place. So all of those pieces will be in place. As the year goes on, we will continue to look at this, and data will drive decisions to remove any of those at any time. Now, obviously, some will never be removed, protocols, cleaning, but mask mandates have gone up and down. So we will continue to follow the guidance and look at each of these strategies to ensure that we are creating the most safe environments for our students and staff. Do any of the board members have any questions? This will be communicated out. Some general information will go out to our families this week, and then school-specific information will come out a little bit later from the actual schools, that it talks about where kids are going to go line up and all of those more school-specific pieces. Yes, Corinne.
Yeah, I just have a question about the rapid testing, the Binax Now, is that what it's called?
Yes.
So is that just for students who exhibit symptoms at school, or is it available for students, if they show symptoms at home? And then how does it work if parents bring them in? Do they come into the building, or is it outside of the building, or how do they get tested?
That's a great question. Our nursing team got this down to a science last year. So what we ask parents to do is, if your child wakes up and they're not feeling well, we don't want students to come into the school. And so they would call in, the nurse would have a phone conversation with them, talk through the symptoms, determine, does it sound like this child needs to have the Binax Now test? They will set up an appointment. It's almost like a drive up. The nurse will go outside and do that test, and they can give them the results within 15 minutes. And that's for symptomatic. So if a child were to get sick at school, we would do the same thing, but we would follow the protocols of, they would go into the nurse's office or an isolation area. So until we know what's going on, we want to make sure that they're separated from other students, and then they would be tested. Our families did an amazing job last year, and really, most of the time, these tests were given before school or at a time where the parent realized the child wasn't feeling well and didn't bring the child into the school. So we'll continue to communicate that message.
Thanks.
I have a question, and I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly how it was done last year, but supervising for lunch, who was responsible last year, and how will it be this year?
So last year we didn't do lunch, but because we had the half-day schedules. Actually, some children did do full day toward the end. And so it depends. In a normal school year, there are teachers and support staff who are assigned to lunchroom supervision. We have Aramark employees that are part of lunchroom supervision. We have administrators that are part of lunchroom supervision. In the next presentation, I'll share with you, but we've worked with Aramark, and they're going to hire an additional 2 Aramark employees per school to help with that supervision. The reason for that is if they're in different locations, we then need more people. And so that would be the strategies that we would use, and each school will implement that as they normally would in a school year. Some teachers prefer, some teachers sign up to do supervision, depending on their schedule. Sometimes it's built in, it varies.
But it will not be mandated for teachers if they don't want to do it, they do not have to do it?
You mean additional?
In addition to their, and I don't know if it is in their contract or not, but I know that some may sign up to do it, and that's a personal choice, but do they have, what if one of them, like they may have medical issues that prevent them from being, can they allow not to?
We always work with individual teachers regarding, having those conversations and determining the concerns and the best way to handle that.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions. The first, you mentioned that extending the lunch period would cut into PE time. I just want to clarify that PE time is mandated in school code.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We would not do that. We would need to find alternate locations because kids need to have their PE time.
Exactly. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And then the second was around saliva testing. This might be a foolish question, but it will require a parent's consent.
Correct.
Form, right, to be
Yes.
signed at the beginning of school?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, and the saliva testing would be done at school. So we're in the very early stages of that partnership, just getting it off the ground. So we will have more information to send out to parents so they will know exactly what it is before they sign off and say, yes, I'd like my child to participate in this.
I have a question. Have we thought about, how are we going to keep students' confidentiality? Because, especially younger ones, are we doing anything to talk about COVID-19 in the classroom so as to, if a kid does need to get tested in the school, have we thought about what are ways that we're going to safeguard so there's not, I don't want to say bullying, but, just that stigma of oh no, he has COVID-19, she has COVID-19.
Yeah, and I think that goes to any, in any school year with you're always addressing those kinds of things with kids, of how we can be respectful of others and how we can be empathetic of what others are going through. I think those are always things that we are stressing with kids. Obviously, confidentiality is a priority. We do our best to not draw attention to a situation with students. There will be, if there are students that are going to need to be remote due to quarantine, we can certainly work with families on how we could provide that support and what that looks like for individual families, whether it's being part of the classroom in some capacity or if they prefer that that's done, more privately. So I think those are things that we can work through. As far as the vaccination piece, I know I've had some questions about, parents, I'm not really comfortable. And so they don't have to let us know if their child is vaccinated. It is helpful with the quarantine process. And if they do submit that card, it does go to the nurse's office, and just similar to other health data, our nurses are very good with confidential information. And so it's not something that is publicized and shared out. It's for knowledge in case a child might have to quarantine, then we would know if they were vaccinated or not. Anybody else have questions?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Wonderful. So I'm going to stay here, and we're going to go on to the next one. So this presentation really kind of talks about how we're utilizing some of the additional resources that school districts across the country are receiving to support that return to school plan. So we are in the process, Jenny, who's the expert in this area, is in the process of writing this grant and finalizing this grant for the American Rescue Plan SR3, which is our third round of dollars that are coming to support school districts around the return to school. So that's exactly what it is. It is an emergency relief fund that's been provided to states and school districts to help safely reopen and sustain that safe reopening of schools to address that impact. So when we look specifically at District 100, we look at, for SR3, we have specific grant allocations that we can utilize between now and September 30th of 2024. So we have several years to plan for and spend these dollars to support students in our schools. So our allocation, that's a federal allocation, is that $6.9 million number. And of that, we are required to spend a minimum of 20% to address learning loss. And then there are some additional state level allocations that come from the grant. One is specifically for learning loss, which is that additional $596,000. And then summer enrichment is an additional $119,000, and then after school programs. So these are all areas that we can spend these dollars over the next 3 years up through 2024. And so when we write this grant, it won't be just a one-year grant. It will be, how are we going to spend these over the next 3 years to really support our students and our schools. So this is a list of all the things that schools are allowed to spend these specific dollars on. I'll just highlight a few things. Coordinating that preparedness and response efforts, training and professional development, purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean facilities, and that's something that we also spent dollars on our first 2 grants in that area, ensuring that we had those hand sanitizer stations, that we have all the cleaning and disinfecting products in place. Repairing and improving our school facilities, improving indoor air quality, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's something we have invested in and will continue to with these dollars. Addressing the needs of individual children, diverse groups of children, developing and implementing systems to improve our response efforts, purchasing that educational technology. We did more of that during the remote learning, where we were providing hotspots at homes for students who might not have had internet access. So we've used some in that area. Providing that social emotional support, and you'll see we'll be addressing that as well. Planning for and implementing academic or activities during long-term closures. Hopefully that was more toward last year, but something that we can continue to put dollars toward. Summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, learning loss, and then anything necessary to maintain and operate our continuity of service. So ensuring that kids are having the best educational opportunities and environment that they can. So when looking at what we are writing into our grant and looking at as far as spending those dollars over the next 3 years, our biggest priority, and you saw specific percentages around learning loss and social emotional support and after-school programs to support educational educational programs. We have started investing in those things with our first round of ESSER, I guess it was CARES at the time, CARES 1 and 2, and we began to add some staffing to help support that. And we want to be able to sustain that staffing for the next 3 years through this funding and through this grant. So you will remember that we added 6 additional math interventionists at our elementary schools. So we have 6 math teachers, 1 for each elementary school, which is an area that we needed some additional support. We want to continue to fund those additional 2 social work positions that we added. Also continued funding for our dual language and EL teachers to continue to support our students. We're excited to be working with Youth Crossroads on a partnership to add some counseling services for both of our middle schools. That's new for this SR3 plan, and so we're still working through the final details on that, but and if you remember, Youth Crossroads already has counselors supporting our students after school at our middle schools, but we're working on a partnership where they could provide some counselors during the school day to help support the 3 social workers that we have at each middle school now. And so we feel that that's gonna be an important component, especially in this first year coming back, that we wanna provide that additional social emotional support. Summer school programs, after school tutoring, full-time substitute teachers. This one, we want to, thinking about the potential that there are times when some students might need to be quarantining throughout the school year. So we're looking to hire full-time substitute teachers to support quarantine students. So each school would have someone on site every single day to support the school in a variety of capacities, but specifically for if they need to do some support with students, if they need to support the teacher in the classroom while a student or 2 might be on Zoom. We want to have that extra set of hands to be sure that we're able to meet the needs of students that are in the classroom as well as students that a small number of students that might be learning remotely. And then we have partnered with North Berwyn School District to add to our resources a 24/7 digital tutoring platform that's going to be available to our families this school year for grades 3 through 8. And so it will be an app on their iPads where they can access a digital tutoring program anytime that they want. And we had the opportunity to go through this process. These are live tutors that they can access, and they really do coach and help students. They don't give them the answers. There's ways for the kids to upload what their homework assignment was, so the tutor knows exactly what it is that they're working on. And our teachers would be able to have access to a system that shows the kids that were needing additional support so they can follow up and continue to support. So that will be a tool that is available, and we will get more information out to our families, our teachers, our families, our students as the year gets underway. That is available in both English and Spanish, so it will support all of our students and give them that opportunity that if they're at home and they're struggling with something, that they have access to a teacher that can be able to help them. Additionally, we added a family liaison that will be helping us, particularly with communications, workshops, welcoming our new families into the school district, adding that another layer to ensure that we are doing community outreach and are communicating, having two-way communication with our families. Transportation, we'll be adding an additional smaller school bus to accommodate some additional routes, as well as additional bus assistance to help support. And we added a few more bus assistants in CARES 1 and 2, so those will be continuing. Health and safety, we've had to transform some different spaces into learning spaces so kids can spread out more. We're looking at our 2 middle school libraries and reimagining how that can look and how we could have more learning spaces in those libraries, but where kids could be spread apart further. As I mentioned, that additional lunchroom support through Airmark, and then continuing with the cleaning, disinfecting supplies. And then finally, I'm sure, I'm going to turn this over to George here in a minute, who's going to talk about all the projects that are happening this summer, but we're looking at working with our architect for the next 3 summers. How do we continue to address that ventilation and air quality, specifically in some of our older buildings? So we're looking at the replacement of univents in multiple elementary schools. Some of them are 25 years old, and they're still doing a really good job, and we have upgraded a lot of our filters, but over time, we're going to need to replace those. We still have places within our district where we need to continue to invest in asbestos removal. And then, as the board is aware, we do have a long-range facilities plan. So we're looking at specific items that are addressed for air quality to be able to address those through these dollars. And all of these things qualify under the allowable expenses and meet the requirements of, you know, a large majority going to addressing the needs of our students. Oh, that's the last page. Does anybody have any questions on this?
I just have a comment. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The slide where you mentioned the addition of 10 substitute teachers.
Yes.
So in the event of a student being quarantined, would the substitute teachers take on those remote students, or were you saying that teachers would continue with simultaneous instruction?
It depends. You know, I think at that point we would be having communications with our teachers. There may be some teachers that say, you know what, I'm pretty comfortable with this. They can simultaneously teach and come on in. There's some teachers that may say, I'm going to simultaneously teach, but I really need that substitute to come into my classroom so that they can help support the students on Zoom. There may be some situations where it makes more sense for that substitute teacher to do some work independently with a group of Zoom students that might be remote. And so, you know, that is something that we will work with our teachers on about what they're most comfortable with in that regard.
Will will a substitute be assigned to a specific school, or will they be rotated in different places? How will that work?
So our plan is, if we're going to post these and get them out there, our plan is that they would be assigned to a specific building. So they get to know the staff, they get to know the students. And if there's no students on quarantine, which would be wonderful, then they're providing support anywhere that it might be needed. So they might be supporting throughout the day. They might be popping in different classrooms to support the teacher. Maybe the teacher might be working on, you know, a particular project where she could use an extra set of hands. And so we want to make, create an opportunity where the substitute teacher makes relationships throughout the school, and they're part of the school, and that they may be utilized in different ways.
I just wanted to mention that I was very excited about the Tutor app, and I just love to hear when we are partnering with D98. It makes me very happy and proud.
Yes, it will be exciting that students from both districts will have access, and it's a really great opportunity. It actually came through a partnership with West 40 that we all belong to, and we think it'll be really great for our students. So that is exciting. More information to come. All right. Well, then I am going to turn this over to George, and he is going to give us an update on all the summer projects that are happening right now. Do you want this?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Thank you, Mary.
Good evening. I'm going to go just alphabetical order by each school. We have a lot of projects going on, a lot of exciting things. So starting at Emerson, we're replacing the air handler. It's been in our 10-year life safety report to replace the air handler. So while we were doing that, we were adding air conditioning, which I think Mary's mentioned several times, that eventually all of our elementary gyms will get air conditioning. So the air conditioning, and this is as of today where we're at with our construction projects. The air conditioning in the gym has been installed. Initial startup is coming soon. The new ductwork and the stage have been painted and curtains are ready to be hung. We had some asbestos under the floor, under the carpeting in room 104. That's been removed. And the new tile is being put in. And we also removed carpeting from 4 other classrooms and an office that they didn't contain asbestos-containing materials, but the carpet was old and ready to go. And it's, you know, especially with COVID and everything, carpeting isn't the best thing to have, especially when it's 30 years old. We're getting new control panels at 4 of our schools for our building automation system. It's being designed and it'll be installed soon. Installation will not disrupt any of our operations. Right now, the platform that we use with Siemens Technologies for our building automation is outdated. It's obsolete. So we're going to their new platform. And the new panels will be at Emerson, Pershing, Irving, and Piper. Freedom is having a lot of work done. The old columns have been removed. The columns in front of the school were deteriorating for whatever reason, but our engineering company determined that they needed to go. So those are being removed, and the new columns will be delivered on Monday, and they'll start putting those up to support the front of the building. We had new bollards installed. Those are the little yellow things that you see to keep cars from going onto the sidewalk accidentally. Those have been installed and painted. The areas that were exposed due to the removal of the colonnade were, they've been bricked over. That's nearly complete. And in the newer schools like Heritage and Middle School, we have things that are called variable air volume controls, which controls the volume of air and the amount of hot water in the winter to heat the room that goes through there. The ones at Freedom, it's our newest school, but those were failing, so the wiring for that is nearly complete, and the installation of the new controls will begin next week. Heritage, we had 2 new roofs put on. We have the center roof that you can't see from the street, but it's there, that needed to be replaced. And then if you can see along the pitched roof, we had that re-roofed, new shingles, new backing for it, so that's complete. All that needs to be done is some fascia and soffit work needs to be done. At Hiawatha, we're installing air conditioning in the gym. It'll be complete by the time school starts. The new playground equipment has been installed. I hope you've all had a chance to go see it. It really looks excellent. Today, they ground up the old asphalt, so they're gonna start putting the new stone down and a new coat of asphalt. It'll be pitched to the sewers. It'll be a really nice thing. And then we're getting a new fence there, and it all should be completed prior to the beginning of the school year. At Irving, we did some life safety work. I don't know if you noticed the doors that stay open in the hallways by themselves. They're held open by magnets, which when the fire alarm goes off, the current that holds those magnets, they're called hold open devices, it closes to make the fire doors effective. So we had some new ones installed at Irving, and then no other major projects at Irving because we had summer school there. Kamensky, we had abatement of the first floor ceiling, which would contain asbestos, and the new ceiling's been installed. Kamensky is our first school to be all LED in their lighting. We had new LED lighting installed there. And the abatement of the floor in 3 classrooms is complete, and the new floor has been installed. At Laverne, we converted a storage room into a coach's office and administrator space. We did a lot of that in-house, and we've had some help from a contractor with that. and we installed new tiling throughout the north side of the basement area, and including rooms 1 and 4 and the hallway. Purging had no major projects due to summer school. Piper's project was AC for the gym, and that project's nearly complete. A couple other in-house projects that we did, you know, in addition to our preventative maintenance that we do in the summer, such as cleaning coils on all of our air conditioning units and such. We've relamped the entire district to LED lighting, so that should really help us out with our energy bills. And wherever faucets have been failing, like in bathrooms, and I'm sure you've all been in a bathroom where you push down on the sink and the water won't stay on, we're replacing those with touchless. So we've installed about 100 of those. That's it. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was a very thorough list. I just want to say thank you to all of the presenters. There's always a lot of preparation that goes into the presentations that are given to the Board of Education, and a lot of time and attention, so thank you for that.
All right. Thanks, George, for your report. We're really excited about all the work that's happening around the district, and I think our students and teachers will be excited as we move forward with a lot of these plans. So we had 4 FOIAs this month. Those were submitted, and the board should have access to those. And I will turn it over to Jenny for the financial report.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. I have quite a lengthy agenda, so hang tight. I'll start with our usuals. Our bank balance as of today is $41.4 million. Our revenue for July is $1.1 million, which, if you recall from prior board meetings, that's very low for revenue. But keep in mind, July, we do not receive EBF funds from the state, and taxes right now are delayed due to whatever's going on in Cook County. So thank goodness we do have a fund balance because we don't have that revenue coming in. So our good news is that we did just get our final levy back. We got the levy edit report back, and we are within $2,000 of our prediction for what our levy is. Our 2,000 in the good. That's a pretty good percentage when you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. This was a regular, and you've heard me say this before, it's a regular PTEL year, which means PTEL did kick in, which means we were reduced and we were capped, which is a good thing because our EAV, no joke, went up by 24.6%. That's the highest, highest I've seen in a very long time. The last time it was that high was in 2009 when it went up. Our EAV is over, I can't even quote it right now. Oh, I do have it right here. It's our current EAV is 541,954,000. It hasn't been this high since 2009, 2010. So, next on my notes. Okay, here's our cash flow report for how we ended in June. Our revenue for the month of June was $3.3 million with year-to-date of $57 million, which it's hard to see up there, but we are 103% over in revenue. So we had a lot of money coming in this year. We were awarded FEMA money. We had CARES grant money, 2 different CARES grants money. Actually, 3 or 4 different CARES grants money if you account the governor's grant for early childhood. Our expenses month to date were $3.9 million, so our year to date was $49 million, and we're down in expenses, which was $92.83 million. Our expenses are down due to various of things. Well, our overall, hold on, let me go to the next one. Jim, can you go to the next slide? Yes. Perfect. That one's hard to see, but this is a financial projection software program, which is provided to us by Forecast 5. You upload your monthly financials each month, and it projects forward, and it shows you where you're going to end with at the end of the year. This projection is exactly, bless you, is exactly where we end up for the end of the year. But I wanted to show this format just so that you can see it says the beginning balances, your revenues, expenditures, your other sources, and your fund balance at the end. You can see where it says other sources, where the 1 million is, and the 1 million, that was the 1 million bond abatement that we did. And then you'll see also 2.5 million transfer from O&M to capital projects. That's because you can't end the year in a negative balance in your fund, and we do all of our capital projects through our capital projects fund, through Fund 60. But the money for it comes in through Fund 20, so you have to transfer it over. You'll see that on your, sorry. You'll see that on the board resolution tonight where you transfer 2.5 million from one fund to the other, and that's where you see it. Jim, can you go to the next slide, which is the end of the year budget? Yep, and then can you go to the end of the second page? Thank you. So here's where we ended up, all the ins and outs, all the ins and outs. So again, our expenses, and I apologize, that says tentative, it should say total. Our total expenses is 49 million. Our total revenue is 57 million. That gives us a surplus of 8 million for the year. Where does that 8 million come from? Well, we received 2.4 million more in revenue. We had less expenses due to COVID. So it was a very hard year to predict, given that you have all the unknowns. You had less substitute teachers because we weren't in the classroom. We also had considerable less in transportation because you weren't busing students back and forth. We weren't doing field trips. We weren't transporting students to special education outplacement facilities. We also had less in utilities. We had less in just overall school supplies. So all of that makes up your difference. Then can you go, Jim, to the next one? This is, I like this graph. I know, Jim, can you blow it up just a little? Thanks. The bottom line is, the red dotted line, is where our spending pattern, our fund balance at the end of each month for 2 years ago, for the 1920 school year. The blue line is the spending pattern for where we are for 2021. And you can see they mirror each other. And as you've heard me say before, you receive your bulk of your revenue twice a year as your taxes. So you can see that's where your fund balance. It's around August and it's around March. And so that's where they mirror each other. Kind of a neat display. Could you go to the next slide then? So this is also on our board agenda tonight for you to approve our tentative 22 budget. And so when you're looking at the tentative 22 budget, you have to kind of go back a couple years and go, what did a normal year look like? What did it look like during COVID? And what do we predict it's going to look like next year? And so you're doing a lot of predicting back and forth. Can you go to the end of this one, Jim, of page 2? Keep going, keep going. Keep going, a little further down. Okay, sorry. Sorry. Okay, so right now, we are looking at a 3 million positive forecast of a surplus. However, we don't have all of the grant in there yet. We don't have all of the CARES grant in there yet. So this is going to change. You're approving the tentative tonight. It then goes on display for the 30 days. You will then approve, and we'll have a hearing, and you'll approve the final one in September. And this is kind of a working document, and as grants are updated, as account numbers are updated, and then you'll approve the final one in September, and it has to be submitted to the state by the end of September. Also on the agenda tonight, you'll see on the consent agenda, items C and F, we've already talked about. That's the budget and the resolution. Item D on the consent agenda is anytime you have the contract over 25,000, you go for, it needs board approval. These are your special education related services for students that we approve as a regular approval every year to renew for the next year. Item G at the bottom, I'll also talk about here. This is approval, or asking for approval to purchase new cafeteria tables for Freedom Middle School, again, so that we can social distance and spread students out throughout the cafeteria. I think I've got it all. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jenny. All right, moving on to the president's report, and we will start with the equity and anti-racism resolution. Elizabeth?
We have nothing to report other than we're going to be having our first meeting, Joel and I, and a group of members from the community on Thursday, August 5th, correct? Yes. Anything else that you want to share?
No.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to policy.
The policy committee started up again after having a couple months off, and the majority of our policies tonight were first reads and were the 5-year reviews, and so there were not a lot of changes there. The one policy 2230 around public participation, there were a couple of questions that we had, and so Dr. Bruno is going to help us with getting some more information that we will bring to our next policy meeting.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you very much. Legislative report. Back to Elizabeth. I'm sorry, you're very busy tonight. Elizabeth is recording as our secretary tonight in the absence of Board Member Lopez.
And then for legislations, we have nothing new since the last I report. I actually went on the website, and I was the same one that I shared last time, so there's nothing new to report, so that's it.
Okay, great. And then correspondence, there was one correspondence that the Board of Education replied to. And now we are moving on to public comment. If anybody would like to step to the podium and address the board, you may do so at this time. And please be sure to state your name for the record, please. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, my name is Manuel Haro. This is my first time here.
Hi, can you spell your first and last name just for the record?
Oh, yeah. Manuel, and the last name is Haro. Manuel Haro.
Haro?
Haro.
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions. I know they're public comments, but I would just like to ask them. I know I probably won't get a response, but I'd like to know how many kids are actually under the age of 12 in the district. I'd also like to publicly state as a question, has there been any idea or thought of at what point you will close down a school if transmission gets to a certain level? Also, how do I state this? How will you be notifying a classroom if someone does become COVID positive? Are you going to shut that classroom down? Are you going to select the students? Like, how is that little bubble determined? Especially if reporting your vaccination status isn't required and is just suggested. How quickly could you guys go back to e-learning if everything goes to the worst case scenario? What would be the transition? How fast could you do it? And this is assuming the worst, and hopefully that doesn't happen. Since this is my first time, I don't know if there's a dedicated nurse. Is there a dedicated nurse for each school? And that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, we'll move on to the, oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay, cool. Do you need me to repeat any of that? Start over. Okay, so Ana Torres, Ana Torres, first word resident, Berwyn taxpayer. I don't have to state my address, do I? Okay, cool. So I was really excited to see the SR funding plans. Very excited to see the mental health issues that we'll be spending money on. But still very curious to know, or actually I'm going to begin digging on my own, but I'm just really curious as to how much money the city of Berwyn is paying to have police officers in these schools, in this very school. Again, I do have a sibling who will be attending in a couple of weeks, and so just, you know, it's nice that you're thinking about mental health, but let's also connect it to how it connects in the bigger picture. I'm really excited about Joel and Elizabeth, the work that you're going to be doing for the anti-racism and equity. So just really curious about that because I know that it doesn't come out of the school budget, right? So if we are taking ESSER funds to tackle mental health, then why can't we take that money to also tackle mental health? It was, I think, 2 weeks ago when these two kids from Heritage actually got into this like brawl right in front of my house, and you know, we had to break them up, and obviously we are not trained at de-escalation or anything like that, and we were able to do it. And so I feel like if, you know, we can break up two kids in a fight, I don't really understand why we need police officers in an elementary school. And again, just the implications of how traumatizing that can be, not just to, you know, the prison, school to pipeline, you know, system that this is a part of, because again, you just institutionalize being watched, being, you know, monitored, and it just, you're normalizing that for our majority Latinx students. So that was my first mention of that, because again, this is very important to me, and I'm really glad that you're taking on mental health and considering mental health. But again, like, I would love to connect that to the larger picture, because, you know, this is where they start to be, you know, this is where policing starts to be normalized for our students. And then if they stay in District 100, then they move on to the next batch. And again, you know, in high school in Berwyn, it is like on a whole other level. You know, there's a lot of research. And again, it's like this has been done in districts throughout the country. July 7th, Alexandria in West Virginia, I believe, you know, is actually going to take all that money that they would give to hire police officers and is instead going to use that to fund mental health resources. So again, it's like, it's really not that controversial. It's being done in districts, small and large, throughout the country. I'm positive that it could be done here. And again, if it's not coming out of the school budget, then why not just say, we don't need that here? Why can't we find a more holistic approach to, you know, dealing with our students, and instead of criminalizing them, what can we do to support them? So please consider that. There are a lot of really great books out there. I'm happy to provide any of those resources. But again, I just would love it if you could be empathetic and put yourself in the shoes of a student who You know, I mean, again, the research is out there, the numbers are out there. You can clearly see that once students start to be put into that punishment of, you know, getting expelled, or like the statistics just skyrocket. And then, you know, when you consider that the majority of people that are incarcerated don't even have a high school diploma, like this is all connected. So I'd really love if you could just look into that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay.
Hi, Jonathan Pallas, 3rd Ward resident. So this is my statement from last time. I'm going to read it again. I was happy because I thought the situation was resolved, but it looks like it's not. So I'm just going to read my statement from last time again. So I'd like to start by thanking you, all the board members who voted against the proposed Ridgeland estate plans. You demonstrated that when the people speak, you listen, and this is how you can build trust with a community that feels we've been unheard and betrayed by special interests. During the board's listening session about the racial equity agreement, one of the biggest takeaways I had after listening to everyone share their ideas was the fact that there was little trust in the school board. Now, I don't blame this school board for creating those divisions, as they've existed for a long before many of you were even in this position. But I hope you can continue to build trust and hear the voices of more members of our community. So in order to do that, this must be a safe space for members of the community to voice their concerns and share their opinions. Unfortunately, at the end of the May 26th meeting, that safety was shattered by one of District 100's employees. After the session adjourned, George Lambesis approached the community members, myself included, and began to point his finger and yell at us. Another district employee, thank you again, grabbed him by the shoulder and escorted Mr. Lambesis out of the room. His actions were aggressive and completely uncalled for. In addition to his actions on May 26th, Mr. Lambesis continued his attack on community members with no truth, no facts, and no shame on June 8th when he spoke at City Hall, indicating that community members were led by Alderman Rob Pabon. He falsely characterized me and the other community members who spoke out against the Ridgeland Estates plan as Alderman Pabon's cohorts, comparing us to MAGA and QAnon supporters. I could point out that many of us spoke out in several meetings before the actual vote, the one night that Alderman Pabon was in attendance. I could point out that I had no idea Alderman Pabon was going to be here that night. But I shouldn't have to defend why I was here that night. I shouldn't have to have my integrity questioned because George was upset that the vote didn't go the way he wanted. I shouldn't have to worry that if I support something that goes against the will of George Lambesis, he might get up and begin yelling at me. His actions over the past few weeks have demonstrated that this space cannot be a safe space for community members, especially not for parents or of students in D100 while he's in it. Therefore, I'm requesting that George Lambesis no longer be allowed to attend school board meetings. His presence creates tension and is intimidating to community members who fear repercussions for speaking their minds. As long as he's in these meetings, community members cannot trust that the district is creating a place where their voices will be heard and they are safe from aggressive behavior. Continued support of Mr. Lambesis' presence during school board meetings demonstrates that the district supports his actions. Allowing George Lambesis to continue to have a presence in these meetings will not help to repair the damage done by previous school boards, school administration, or city administration. Allowing him to continue to have a presence in these meetings will not build trust. It will not create an environment where community members feel comfortable to share their thoughts and concerns. If you're committed to improving relations between the school district and the community it serves, you'll make sure you stay true to the vision of D100. That vision states, we believe in student-centered classrooms and schools that are supportive, safe, and responsive to the social and emotional needs of students, staff, and families. We believe in engaging with families and community members to create partnerships that actively support students' development and learning. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to continuing to partner with you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Mejia. I too, I wasn't going to speak, but listening to Japes just gave me the strength to come up here and again also ask the board what was the outcome of all the residential concerns that we shared at the last meeting regarding Mr. Lembesi's behavior. I personally was one of the ones that he grouped into, I don't know, all the names that he mentioned. I have been harassed online as well by the same antagonistic type of things that he shared at City Council. I don't feel comfortable attending here, making a statement while he's here, because I feel that anything that I say, he's gonna turn around and then somehow cause retaliation towards me. Because it's true, it does happen, it's happened, it's happening. And so I too request that the board take these concerns seriously and address them appropriately. If there's any other avenue that I need to do, whether it's having a meeting with the superintendent, do I need to place a formal complaint somewhere? I will gladly do so. Do I need to speak to anybody else for orientation as far as how I can handle this? I will do that as well. But I'm coming to you. I respectfully ask that you do take our concerns seriously and address them appropriately. If I were to attack a patient that comes and complains, or not necessarily complains, but makes their concerns heard about the facility where I work, and then I turn around and complain, harass, falsely accuse them of things, I would be fired because I indirectly represent my company. He was on the clock here that day. He had no business going to City Hall, airing what we shared our concerns about. And not only that, but like classifying us into something that we're not. You know, we're not trying to cause harm to the community, we're trying to help. We are minorities, we're people of color, we are the ones that are being targeted. He will never understand that, no matter how his lineage by marriage is denominated by his mother-in-law or whatever he shared that day. It's not the same, he will never understand, and him dismissing our lived experiences is not cool. And I urge the board to please take all of this into consideration and address that. Thank you.
Can you tell me your last name?
Sorry. Yeah, Mejia.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for public comment. All right, moving on to the action items in the consent agenda tonight. Items may be removed from the consent agenda on the request of any one member. Is there anything that a board member would like to remove from the consent agenda to vote on singly? Okay. Then I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
I'll move.
Okay. Thank you. Motion made by Dawn and seconded by Andrews. Thank you. Okay. On the call of the roll when you're ready, Elizabeth.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Steinfeld.
Aye.
Jimenez. Aye. Dressel.
Aye.
Andrews.
Aye.
And Lopez absent with notice.
Motion carries. Okay, there's a second opportunity for public comment. There were no emailed public comments. Is that correct? I'm going to make sure okay. So this is the portion of the meeting where we would typically read those, but we have none tonight. So we are then moving on to announcements. Are there any announcements?
I just want to recognize Dr. Bruno at his first meeting as Assistant Superintendent of Staff and Student Services, his new title, and joining us at the board table. So wanted to take a minute to recognize that.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I entertain the motion for us to adjourn.
All right, motion made by Jimenez, seconded by
I'll second.
Dawn, to adjourn the regular meeting at 8:15. On the roll, please, when you're ready.
Andrews. Dressel.
Aye.
Don.
Aye.
Lopez, absent with notice. Jimenez, aye. Stanfield.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Have a wonderful night.